Let's take a journey. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Turn of the 20th century. You're standing on a street corner in this Spanish-speaking metropolis, and everywhere you look, architectural grandeur, buildings of astonishing monumentality, massive columns, facades carved with intricate detail, arched windows so enormous they seem designed for something other than human scale. Everything speaks to the highest level of engineering sophistication, the unique face of a great South American capital, you'd think. Now mentally leap thousands of miles. Different continent. You're in Kyiv, capital of Ukraine, then Pittsburgh, United States, then Frankfurt, Germany. And here's where something strange happens. You're surrounded by nearly identical architectural masterpieces. The language changed, the culture changed, the hemisphere changed, but the stone didn't, the style didn't, as if someone cast these cities from a single forgotten blueprint. Official history teaches us that nations developed in isolation. Each culture supposedly evolved its unique architectural expression. We're told about constant wars, impenetrable barriers, fundamental conflicts that shaped completely different societies. But the silent stone giants standing in our city centers tell a very different story. They're irrefutable proof of something we're not supposed to see: a global, unified civilization, one whose standards and aesthetics were identical from Australia to Canada, from Russia to Argentina. These aren't just similar structures. They are precise copies, united by common design, common technology, common purpose, which raises a logical but deeply unsettling question. Why is the architectural code embedded in the foundations of the world's capitals so universal? Why, despite all linguistic and cultural barriers supposedly separating humanity, do buildings at opposite ends of the earth speak the same monumental language? Whose will lies behind this global project? What forgotten technology made it possible? And most importantly, who left us this grand but silent legacy that's never mentioned in history books? That question is where our investigation really begins. When you look closer at these architectural marvels, the unified style is just the beginning. The real mystery emerges in the details we've been conditioned to ignore. Shift your focus from the grand scale of a majestic facade to its individual elements. An unsettling sense of disproportion begins to creep in. Look at the entryways. These aren't doors in any normal sense. They're gargantuan portals, height and width 2, sometimes 3 times that of an adult human. The massive leaves of wood and metal seem designed to be opened easily by beings of completely different stature. For an ordinary person, using such an entrance isn't just inconvenient, it's absurd. The handles are placed too high. The weight of the doors would require inhuman effort to move. The same applies to windows. They begin at levels impossible to reach without equipment and soar upward, becoming enormous light apertures for halls whose ceilings vanish somewhere in unreachable heights. These aren't windows for looking out onto the street. They're light sources for spaces designed on a fundamentally different scale. A person standing next to such a window or door doesn't just look small, they look misplaced, like an accidental guest in a world not built for them. The proportions are all wrong. Walls constructed from giant stone blocks, each weighing tens of tons. A person against their backdrop seems no larger than an insect. Columns so massive it would take 3 people linking arms to encircle them. You get this persistent nagging feeling. We're like Lilliputians who stumbled into a land of giants, trying desperately to adapt their world to our modest needs. This architectural dissonance finds unexpected confirmation in old chronicles and travelers' accounts. Patagonia, that same region in Argentina, has been known for centuries as the land of giants. Ancient reports survive, even photographs, capturing local inhabitants standing beside Europeans. The height difference is staggering. People we consider normal height standing next to natives who look like something from mythology. This evidence forces us to reconsider the architecture around us. What if it isn't the result of mindless imperial grandeur? What if all these proportions were calculated precisely, ergonomically, but for beings of the height spoken of in legends? For them, these giant doors would have been normal doors. The high ceilings would have been comfortable living space. This thought fundamentally transforms our perception of reality. We stop being the masters of these cities. We become their inheritors, squatters trying to inhabit colossal structures left behind by someone else. But this realization births an even deeper question. If the very scale of these buildings was designed for other beings, perhaps their function was also completely different from what we've been told. What if the places we now call theaters, banks, and cathedrals were never intended for performances, financial transactions, or prayer at all? The mystery deepens when we examine the most common and recognizable of these structures, the ones we call churches, cathedrals, temples. They stand like sentinels across the globe, united not only by architectural style, but by a striking set of identical design features. We're told they're places of worship, centers of spiritual life, but set aside the interpretations forced upon us. Look at their structure from an engineer's perspective rather than a theologian's. A completely different picture emerges. What if their purpose wasn't metaphysical, but purely physical and technical? Consider their key elements. The dome, presented as a symbol of heavens, is from a physics standpoint, a perfect resonator and energy concentrator. Often these domes have metal frames or coatings, which only enhances potential electromagnetic properties. The tall spires and bell towers piercing the sky aren't just attempts to reach closer to divinity, they're perfect antennas, designed to capture atmospheric electricity and interact with Earth's energy field. Even the crosses at their peaks, especially the old intricate ones, might not be religious symbols at all. They could be multi-beam wave terminals, dischargers or receivers. The rose windows with their complex geometry could have served not just for beauty, but for modulating sound or light frequencies. The entire building looks like a highly complex technical device, a gigantic machine where every element performs a precise function in a unified system. Based on this logic, one could conclude these structures weren't temples of faith at all. They were power plants, generators of free wireless energy drawn from the environment, from what was once called the ether. Inside these vast halls, there might have been none of what we see today. Imagine these spaces in their original form, immense resonant chambers with perfect acoustics, empty, devoid of pews, icons, altars, and other religious paraphernalia. Perhaps all that was added much later, repurposing incomprehensible, defunct technical facilities for the spiritual needs of a new, technologically diminished humanity. People didn't come to pray, they came to recharge, to utilize the output of this power installation. To grasp the chasm between that civilization and ours, compare one of these imperial buildings with what we construct today. Look at an ordinary modern wall, brick or concrete, built to human proportions. Simple, functional, understandable. Its purpose is shelter. It's honest in its simplicity, perfectly matching our technological level. Now mentally return to the walls of old cathedrals, assembled from perfectly fitted multi-ton blocks with surgical precision. The difference isn't just scale or beauty, it's a difference in concept, in technology, in the very understanding of physical laws, like comparing a child's stick drawing in sand to the blueprint of a complex machine. This observation leads to an unavoidable conclusion. If a global network of wireless, clean, likely free energy really existed, powering cities and enabling unprecedented technological capabilities, what happened to it? Why was there such a catastrophic rollback, forcing humanity to return to primitive technologies? Why do we today pay for every kilowatt transmitted through tangled wires if our ancestors possessed something immeasurably more advanced? If the hypothesis of a global energy grid is correct, it must have powered not just monumental buildings, but daily urban life. And evidence for this is hiding in plain sight, captured in old daguerreotypes and photographs from the late 19th century. They paint a startling, almost fantastical picture of a world we think we know. On the streets of Buenos Aires, Pittsburgh, even towns in Texas that weren't yet part of the United States, we see elegant, silent streetcars gliding along tracks. No overhead wires. We see early electric cars, even something resembling electric scooters, an era of clean, efficient, widely available electricity. Cities lit, transportation running, all apparently part of a single, highly advanced technological system. But then something inexplicable happens, a true historical paradox. Just a few years pass. The 20th century begins. Those very same streets and photographs from that period are transformed into a morass of mud, filled with horses and primitive carts. The electric motors vanish. In their place, 1 horsepower, literally. This isn't just technological change. It's catastrophic regression, a step backward that contradicts the very logic of progress. A society that had already mastered advanced electric engines somehow voluntarily returns to horse-drawn transport. In some photos, people proudly pose next to their carts as if it were a great achievement. Why would advanced technology, cleaner, faster, more efficient, be replaced by something archaic, dirty, and slow? There can be only one answer. This wasn't natural evolution. It was deliberate action. The Great Shutdown hypothesis suggests that at a certain point, the global free energy grid was forcibly deactivated, its source cut off. Technologies running on it instantly became useless. Streetcars stopped. City lights went out. Humanity was thrown backward in development. But why? The answer most likely lies in the nature of this energy. If it was free, available to all, requiring no wires, it was impossible to control, to measure, and most importantly, to sell. It was technology that granted independence. To bring humanity under control, that independence had to be eliminated. The old system was forced into oblivion, declared inefficient, dangerous, perhaps even heretical. Then a generation later, when memories had faded, the world was given new electricity. But this was completely different technology, centralized, requiring giant power plants, entangling cities in webs of wires, and most importantly, equipped with a meter in every home. Humanity was given back fire, but now had to pay for every spark. This great technological deception enabled creation of a system of total control and commercialization of energy. However, such a global operation, shutting down and replacing technology, couldn't happen without traces. It left behind thousands of giant silent witnesses, buildings, power plants, bridges, cathedrals that the new, weakened civilization could neither build nor properly explain. To cover evidence of this crime against humanity, rewriting textbooks wasn't enough. Something more had to be done. They had to claim another's legacy as their own. But hiding technology on this scale is impossible without global historical falsification. They needed a way to make us believe we built all of this ourselves. To legitimize appropriation of the previous civilization's legacy, the new masters needed to create an illusion of continuity, prove that these magnificent buildings were the work of our direct ancestors. For this, a powerful tool was employed: photography. Archives hold hundreds of images supposedly capturing construction of these imperial structures in the 19th and early 20th centuries. We're shown men in boater hats and work clothes posing against grand construction sites. These images are meant to convince us that they, with their primitive winches and horse-powered cranes, erected these architectural masterpieces. But close analysis of this evidence reveals a shocking pattern. In every single photograph, the same stage of work is depicted. We see a building already fully erected, walls up, arches formed, columns in place, often even the roof installed. Flimsy wooden scaffolding merely leans against finished facades. The people on this scaffolding are doing anything but construction. They're painting, plastering, installing decorative elements, or simply posing for the photographer. In essence, we're being shown the final stage of finishing work, perhaps repairs. But we're never, not in a single picture, shown the ground zero phase. Where are photographs of giant excavations being dug? Foundations capable of supporting the weight of these colossuses? Where's the process of pouring or laying these foundations? Where are images of multi-ton stone blocks and columns being hoisted into place? It doesn't exist. The construction history of these buildings begins when they're already standing. This stage chronicle is nothing less than massive historical falsification. The people who discovered and occupied these cities needed to create a myth that they were the builders. So, they organized photo shoots simulating activity against the backdrop of existing structures. They built what was already built. The height of this theatrical absurdity was the so-called World's Fairs, held with great fanfare around the globe at the turn of the century. A prime example, the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, 1901. For this event, an entire city of imperial buildings, incredible beauty and complexity, was supposedly erected in very short time, complete with canals, towers, electric illumination. The official story claims all this splendor was made of plaster and wood, temporary pavilions completely demolished after the fair ended. But this version doesn't withstand scrutiny. The structures and photographs look absolutely solid and permanent. It's impossible to believe humanity, having just experienced technological regression and reverted to horses, suddenly gained ability to build such grandiose complexes from plaster and sticks, just for temporary entertainment. A more plausible hypothesis: these exhibition cities weren't built from scratch. Fair organizers found existing, perhaps partially ruined or abandoned cities of the previous civilization, quickly restored them, plastered, painted, installed lighting, presented them to the public as miracles of modern technology. After the event, dismantling simply meant abandoning them again, or in some cases, deliberately destroying them to hide evidence. In this way, memory of the true builders was erased, a new, fabricated history created. We're looking at a world where not only technology but history itself was stolen and rewritten. Grand cities built by a highly advanced civilization were appropriated, their purpose changed, memory of their creators erased. But if this is true, it raises the most fundamental and terrifying question of all. If the previous civilization was wiped out and its history rewritten, who are we, the people of today? Where did we come from? When we turn our gaze from stone and metal to the faces captured in old photographs, the feeling of unreality intensifies. These men, women, and children who inhabited cities of the past seem like representatives of some other humanity. It's not just about clothing or image quality. There's something subtly different in their features, in the structure of their faces, in the expression of their eyes, as if they're looking at the world from another reality. Their gazes often lack emotions we're accustomed to seeing, static and piercing, as if posing not for a photographer but for eternity. This anthropological dissonance becomes even more apparent when we expand from individual faces to the global picture of humanity. Where did the stunning, persistent diversity of races come from? Asians, Native Americans, Africans, and others. We're told we all stem from a single root, but differences between us are fundamental. This mystery of origin fits perfectly into the theory of global catastrophe and civilizational reset. Clues to this catastrophe are literally beneath our feet. All over the world, we see these imperial buildings buried 1, even 2 stories deep in earth. Ground floors we now consider basements have windows leading nowhere, straight into the ground. Massive arched entrances half hidden under layers of what's called cultural soil, but looks more like clay and mud. This phenomenon is so widespread it's been termed the mud flood. What if some global cataclysm, flood, comet impact, or something else wiped the previous civilization from Earth's face and buried its cities under meters of soil, and then these cleared, emptied territories were resettled with new people, us? In this paradigm, we're not the builders. We're not even descendants of the builders. We're inheritors. Given an empty world with ready-made infrastructure, perhaps different races and peoples are different groups of settlers placed in various parts of the planet, each with its own set of basic characteristics. This idea transforms our world into something resembling a giant human farm, a social experiment where we live in scenery left behind by previous, true owners. We use their homes, walk their streets, but have no idea about the true purpose and history of these places. We're simply squatting in the ruins of greatness without realizing it. Such a view completely undermines foundations of our worldview, including the official theory of human origin. The story of a single Adam and Eve, from whom all diversity of nations arose through evolution and migration, seems highly unconvincing, given profound genetic and physiological differences between races. To form such stable, drastic distinctions would require hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of complete isolation, not the few tens of thousands official science allows. The resettlement theory explains this diversity much more simply. Different groups were created or brought here with distinct characteristics already in place. We live in a world full of mysteries hidden in plain sight. They're in the stone of our cities, in the disproportion of doors and windows, in the strange design of old cathedrals, in lost technologies, and in our own faces reflected in mirrors. The story we're told is falling apart under the weight of irrefutable yet ignored facts. The answers aren't in deep space or ancient manuscripts. They're here, all around us. We just need to stop taking things at face value and start seeing. We're standing on the threshold of the greatest discovery in history, the discovery of our own past. Are you ready to see the world around you with new eyes? This journey through silent testimonies of our past leads to one inescapable conclusion. The world we consider our history may be nothing more than an elaborate stage set. The chain of mysteries connects, forming a single coherent picture of an alternate reality. It begins with a simple yet shocking fact: a single imperial architectural style spanning the entire planet, South America to Eastern Europe, completely ignoring cultural and linguistic barriers. This style is embodied in buildings whose gigantic proportions, colossal doors, massive columns, and unreachable windows were clearly designed not for people of our size, but for much larger beings. Next, we see how the most iconic of these structures, our temples and cathedrals, are designed more like technical devices, giant power plants intended to draw free energy from the environment rather than for performing religious rites. The existence of this global energy grid is confirmed by sharp, inexplicable technological regression at the turn of the century, when advanced electric motors and wireless transport were suddenly replaced by primitive horse-drawn power. And to hide this great shutdown and appropriate the legacy of a fallen civilization, an unprecedented falsification of history was carried out, supported by staged photographs of construction showing only cosmetic repair of buildings that had long been standing. This isn't just abstract hypothesis. Evidence for this hidden history isn't concealed in secret archives. It surrounds us every day. It stands in the central square of your town. Next time you walk down a historic street, stop for a moment. Look up. Appreciate the true scale of an old bank or theater. Notice the ground floor windows disappearing into earth. Ask yourself one simple, honest question. Do you believe people with horse-drawn carts, hand saws, and primitive winches really could have built this? Does the official story match what your eyes see and your intuition tells you? No one can give you the final answer. The choice of what to believe is yours alone. But remember one simple truth. History isn't what's written in textbooks. It's what's carved in stone. You just have to learn how to read it.